Thank you for joining us. Welcome to this episode on our series of Marian Apparitions. I'm Dr. Mike Scherschligt, the founder of the Holy Family School of Faith and the movement of the Holy Family. In this episode, we're going to speak about the very powerful true event of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now, in 1519, Cortez sailed from Spain to the New World, to Mexico. And when he and his men arrived, they found far more than they bargained for they encountered a culture of death, a culture enslaved to a cult of human sacrifice. For the Aztec people worshipped false gods. They worshipped demons under the form of primarily two false gods: the sun god of war, represented by the sun, and the serpent god, represented by the crescent moon. And the Aztec people believed that these two gods demanded human sacrifice. In fact, they sacrificed more than 50,000 men, women, and children every year. And in one 4-day period, in 1487, more than 80,000 people were sacrificed. When Cortez and his men saw this firsthand, his men wanted to flee. For whatever reason Cortez came to the New World in the first place, that day he wrote in his diary that he was convinced that God had sent him to put an end to the human sacrifice. But his men wanted to flee. So Cortez did the unthinkable. He sunk all their ships. They had no way forward but to fight their way into Mexico City and put an end to the human sacrifice, which they did in 1521. Then in 1524, Franciscan missionaries came, but they were an utter failure, having almost no converts to Christ because the emperor had replaced Cortez with a wicked tyrant as the president, Nuño de Guzman. He enslaved the indigenous people and sent them to the Caribbean colonies. Bishop Zumarraga from Mexico City excommunicated de Guzman for his wickedness. De Guzman, in retaliation, tried to assassinate him. Then a third of the Aztec people died from smallpox, and the Aztec astrologers thought this is the end of their world. Things were so bad that at one point in 1530, the bishop wrote a letter to the Emperor Charles V saying, if God does not provide a solution from his own hand, there is no hope. All is lost. But it was then that one of the converts, Juan Diego, on December 12th, 1531, was running into Mexico City to go to Mass and Catechism class. And as he runs past Tepeyac Hill, he hears the most glorious singing. And he sees the most beautiful woman, more beautiful than he could ever imagine, approaching him. And he falls to his knees. And the woman said to him, Juan, dearest of my little sons, let nothing trouble you. Am I not here, who am your mother? Are you not under my mantle of protection? Are you not in the folds of my mantle, the crossing of my arms? Is there anything more that you need? Do not fear any illness. I have a sign for you that you are to take to the bishop and tell him that I want a church dedicated to me here. She directed him to the top of Tepeyac Hill. Now this is December 12th, in the mountains, winter, a barren hill. And there, much to his surprise, he finds flowers of all kinds blooming, but especially a type of rose not yet introduced to Mexico, Castilian roses. Juan thinks that's the sign, so he plucks the roses and he gathers them together. Then Our Lady herself arranges them in his cloak, the cactus fiber bleached cloak worn by all of the Aztecs. She arranges them in his cloak, ties it up around his neck, and sends him into Mexico City. He gains an audience with the bishop. There are 13 people in the room. Juan thinks the sign for the bishop is the roses. And so, at that moment, he drops the roses, and what appears before all those in the room is this image developing right before their eyes on his cloak. The bishop placed the tilma in his private chapel, where he prayed in front of the image for 2 weeks. In that time, the local people heeded the request of Our Lady and built a small chapel dedicated to her at the foot of Tepeyac Hill, where she appeared. Then on December 26, 1531, the bishop took the image in a procession to this new chapel. And on the way, they encountered another procession entering the city, a funeral procession, for a young man had been killed by an arrow through the neck. And when the two processions met, the young man rose from the dead. In a culture without hope, Our Lady appears. She leaves a permanent, virtually indestructible sign. And where the Franciscans had no success, in just 9 years, 10 million Aztecs converted to Christianity. Why? Because they could read the sign. They could read the tilma. This woman was greater than the sun god of war, and greater than their serpent god, represented by the crescent moon, both of whom demanded human sacrifice. And this woman was a queen, designated by the blue-green color of her mantle, only worn by royalty. This queen, who was greater than the sun god and the serpent god, was a virgin, signified by the way she wore her hair. Yet this virgin was pregnant, which we know because she was wearing a maternity belt. But pregnant with whom? There are many flowers on her garment, but only one jasmine flower. And for the Aztec, the jasmine flower represented the highest god of all gods. This virgin is pregnant with the one true God, signified by the jasmine flower over her womb. This is the Virgin Mother of God. Yet she herself is not a goddess, because she prays. And she prays to the one signified by her brooch, which has the black cross. The one true God is her Son, Jesus Christ, who came in it to put an end to all human sacrifice and to set us free from the power of the devil. There are many miraculous elements to this image. First of all, it's on a cactus fiber cloak that normally lasts no more than 5 to 7 years. This tilma, this cloak, is almost 500 years old. For the first 116 years, it laid on the floor before the altar so that anyone could touch it. Yet it was unharmed. It did not deteriorate. In 1921, the radical Marxist government in Mexico outlawed Catholicism and placed a bomb with 19 sticks of dynamite in front of the tilma and detonated it. It blew apart the marble altar, bent over a large brass crucifix blew out the windows, but the image was untouched. Scientific studies have been done about the tilma. What they find is that it's not paint, it's not dye, there are no sketch marks. In fact, the image does not even rest on the fibers. You can place a laser between the image and the tilma. It floats above it at 0.3 of a millimeter. I have this image from a friend of mine named Marian. Her husband, Ivan, was the most famous photographer in Mexico. He was commissioned to produce the official digital image for reproduction. He was not a believer. While creating this image, when he photographed the eyes, he was on a stepladder. He fell off the ladder yelling, "She's alive! She's alive! She looked at me." For her eyes responded as human eyes to light. He hence converted. When they did microscopic studies, enlarging the pupils 2,500 times, they found the image of all 13 people who were in the room when the tilma was manifest. Everyone is experiencing the isolation and the uncertainty in the world. But Our Lady says to us, "Let nothing trouble you. Am I not here who am your mother? Are you not in the folds of my mantle, the crossing of my arms? Is there anything more that you need?" And she invites us, "Give me your heart, and I will place Jesus in them and make you my apostles." Won't you give her your heart? Thank you for joining us for this episode. And follow us on the Holy Family School of Faith YouTube channel. Thank you.